Actually, let me start that again. This is Breaking Boundaries on ECR Radio, Efra Community Radio, and you're listening to Hugh Mayers. This is a talk show where we explore issues, look at phenomena related to current affairs and popular culture, behavior psychology, and we look at relationship dynamics. And later on, God willing, we will be taking a closer look at the dating pool. And when I say the dating pool, I got to give it some context, right? So I don't speak from the position of a secular man. I am a Muslim, so I mean dating with the intention to marry, and I mean all of my cultural nationalists, my Abrahamic following religion, fellow human beings, the black family. We come in all shapes and sizes, right, and flavors. But we're speaking from the perception or the perspective of dating for the purposes of sailing off into the sunset, happy ever after, with a spouse. So there are other forms, but that's the context that I use the headline. Yeah, just wanted to put that out there in the ether.
Disclaimer. Topics addressed in today's program may deal with sensitive issues, for example, struggles with mental health, structural racism, sexual behavior, or politically polarizing themes. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers, commentators, experts, guests, or host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect the channel's policy or founding principles. ECR cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed.
And that simply means Hugh can be a little bit unruly at times or a little bit controversial. So for my sins or for whatever I say, don't hold the station in repute, or anybody calls in, that is the views of the caller and not necessarily those of the station.
Breaking Boundaries Talk Show with your host, Hugh Mayers. Sometimes controversial, often provocative, but always informative. You can call in to ask a question or share your opinion on 0782 611 5543.
So we got some of the formalities out of the way. We can jump into the show. So yeah, it's awesome, absolutely awesome. It's phenomenal that you could join me today, Sunday, 5th of April. Yeah, it's a good day, as Ice Cube would say. It's been a good day. I would like to ask you to do me a favor as we get prepared for our deep dive, and that is to join the Facebook, the Breaking Boundaries Facebook group. Advantages are that there's recordings of previous shows, there's discussion, forum, and also you can formally put forward suggestions for future topics of discussion, which is pretty cool. And if you're a little bit more from the new school and Facebook sounds a little bit old school to you, Facebook, who uses that? I do hear people saying that. I do hear some people don't really mess with Facebook like that, and that's all right. So what I would say is, for those who are a little bit more new school, I'm on the other social media handles. I'm on IG, Hugh Mayers, HUGHMAYERS, and you can get me on TikTok. Talking about up to speed, I'm on TikTok. But also I'm on IG, Facebook, or X. I still struggle to call it X. I always think of it as Twitter. I guess I have to get over that. But yeah, so you can either join me on one of those handles, and we're always open to suggestions for future shows. So that's one thing we really appreciate, and just discussion in general, you know. So yes, let's jump in with a little bit of current affairs. So, in South London this week, Tuesday, I believe it was, I think the following day there was a headline. The Standard headline reads, "Why gangs of feral teenagers are swarming streets, causing panic and chaos." On Tuesday afternoon, I think around approximately, reports suggest around 200 young people from probably the local surrounding areas put out there was an announcement put out on social media, Snapchat, TikTok, etc., that the youngers were going to be meeting up in Clapham Common, right, for a link up. And I guess everything has a context, isn't it? When some people say we're linking up or we've got a link up, it's all different things. It come to mind, or it could mean. But there's going to be a meeting of so. But these young people decided to meet up just to kind of be young people. The age range suggests they were like, year 8, 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, up to probably there was a few older teenagers there, but between that kind of age, so mainly school age children, mainly black children or predominantly black children. And obviously it wasn't in school time, they weren't in their uniform, so them being in their, the boys being in their night techs and their black tracksuits and their hoods up and stuff like that, even at 13, some of them would have, probably given the appearance of an 18-year-old, or, that's the conjure up what it would have, that's what it may have conjured up in the minds of the general public in that era. And it says that families, women with buggies and people had to run into shops and the shops were closed and locked up the shops and stuff. So they were slightly, now terrorizing is a strong word, right? I don't like to criminalize young people in general, and definitely not our young people. They get criminalized enough as it is, and they get a bit of a bad rep. I think they were being young people. There's a phrase they use in American movies and say young and dumb. And we've all done stupid things to impress our friends or just to be part of the hysteria, to say that I was there and I saw what happened, or to have some kind of report back to your friends of what you did. But they essentially was that kind of just running amok in the streets and filming themselves, just creating content for online stuff like that. Nobody got seriously hurt, but it's not cool, and people were alarmed, didn't it? You can imagine if you're like a family person just pushing your buggy, or an elderly person, somebody that's not firm, they see all these kids running around and screaming and just running around. It would be alarming. I wouldn't say terrifying. I think GB News took it a little bit far. It wasn't an act of terrorism or anything like that. And yeah, it was a little bit provocative. Caught them that came up in a few news items, and my suspicion is the police going forward will be employing what they call dispersal orders, where you can't just like hang out in big numbers in certain areas. I think they do have that power, but they will implement it in those areas. And they say that although there was a few arrests that were made, don't be surprised if there is going to be more, because they will be following up. I don't know if that's a bad thing for arrests. I don't know if they need to be prosecuted. It doesn't seem like there was any serious infraction, but to be taken down to the station if you're caught on camera and spoken to seriously might be a help. Might keep you behind out of trouble next time when there's something where you're not using your consequential thinking as a young person, that actually I'm bringing heat to my house, or I'm bringing, maybe my behavior may be negatively affecting others, or at the end of the day, I could be bringing the police in my house could put me in bad standing with my parents. I know that working with young people, I get to understand that, people don't really get beaten no more, and that's for better and for worse. But I do know that that young boys in particular, they do adore access to their phones and to PlayStation. And when the reports I hear is when PlayStations and phone devices and stuff like that are taken away for a week or whatever, and the comment from their peers is, "Bro, you're cooked, you're done out here," and the depression on that young person's face says it all. So parents, while you say, "Oh, we don't beat them like we used to beat them" and stuff like that, I mean, there's many ways to, many roads to Jerusalem, right? There's many ways to skin a cat. While the fear of physical force should still be alive and well, I don't know if you need to implement it, particularly when children are at that age where they're going to be at the age where you can give them a gentle slap on the wrist or something like that. You don't really want to be having to resort to that with children up in their teens, right? I mean, how does that play out? But they don't need to know that. They need to know that, you know, if they step out of line, it could be ugly, right? At least to keep them on the straight and narrow. But yeah, I think that it was a spillover. If I'm honest, I think it was a bit of a spillover from that recent online phenomena in London, where they had certain schools in particular boroughs that were demarcated as red or blue, and that they were gonna have like meetups to fight each other and, you know, score points for how much harm you could inflict on your opposition, which had a lot of adults quite alarmed by it. The potential of it was quite disturbing. I followed some of it on social media, and people were quite concerned because there is a more serious issue with young people in certain inner city areas in particular, where there's there's violence in it. Yeah. People say don't use that word black on black violence. You can call it what you like, but when somebody gets physically harmed, sent to the hospital or sent to the morgue, whatever we call it, it's messed up. We can agree on that, right? And it shouldn't happen, right? And we want to eliminate it. We want to mitigate it. We want to reduce those type of things taking place in society as much as we can, right? But yeah, I think it was a spillover from that. And I did look on social media just to watch a YouTube video of it. But you know what I become interested in is not the actual video, because literally it was just Clapham Common, McDonald's, around that area where Marx is and that. And it was just kids literally just running around screaming and just alarming people. But I didn't see anybody stealing, grabbing anything. I didn't see any physical violence, but just unnerving the general public. And it's a funny time for young people, adolescent. They're no longer a child properly, like as in an infant in infant school. They're not an adult, but they're coming into their adulthood. They're growing, their body's changing, they've got different hormonal changes. And there is this power, and I think particularly boys experience this power with high and deepening of voice. Would hope that, you know, the girls don't get a deepening of voice. But yeah, as in when boys start to become young men, and it's like there's a stage when you walked past adults and it wasn't it's as if you didn't exist, or they could talk to you as a person in authority. And you might jump, or you would listen a bit more, or you would be a bit nervous, even if it was your the teacher was like women teachers. But then as boys get older and they start to fill out in their physical masculinity, they're still children under the Children Act. They're children, right? They haven't developed fully cognitively yet, right? However, when they stand taller than the secondary school teacher that's trying to speak to them the same way as when they was in primary school, or at least with that level of authority, then they push back a bit, or then they feel a bit more empowered to challenge, and they're not so easily accepted, right? And they have this power, or now this physical presence, where grown-ups who didn't see them before were like invisible. When you walk into a space with your night tech on now, and people start to react, adults start to react to maybe hold their handbag a little bit tighter. There is a racialized element to it, right? In places like London, but you know, adults start to hold their handbag, or they seem a little bit frightened of you, or weary of you, or alert, right? Some can find it for a period of time empowering. Like, I got these people scared. That's a power. I can affect other people. So it's something that they'll have to navigate and come to terms with. But it is just a stage. I think it's just a part of the adolescent stage. So you you will get that. But yeah, the children was running amok. I think it speaks to the power of the crowd, and everybody is susceptible to that. Young, old, black or white, rich or poor, right? That's how we get social trends. That's how we get things like social contagion, when there's anorexia. You know, like certain things come up and it hits the media, and then before you know it, every other person, or it's on every other talk show, and the statistics for that particular thing absolutely spike, and it trends for a period of time, you know, 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, whatever it is, right? And it could be self-harm, it could be transgender, it could be eating disorders, self-harm, suicidal ideation, whatever it is, right? Sometimes it's not as dark, right? But it trends, right, that take place, and the statistics spike, right? Social contagion, isn't it? We're affected by the crowd, right? Also, there's the power of conformity, right? They've done research, psychological research, behavior psychologists, right? But also psychologists done research related to how, as individuals, we can be influenced by the opinion of the group. That we like to think of ourselves as individual, free thinking beings, right? But that we are supremely influenced by the tribe. That we've lived on this planet Earth as a species for over 1 million years in groups, not like just by ourselves, right? Living by ourselves is new. People being on their own is new. This is very 20th century, late 20th century, 21st century type of living, right? We have always lived in communities and families and tribes and clans. And so we were hardwired to be influenced by the opinion of others and to seek validation from others, right? And so, we are susceptible to conformity, right? And that might speak to the reason why the young people got caught up in that situation as well. It isn't just a crisis of sort, right? It isn't just a sign of the modern times of how awful the youth are, and in our day we were so great. For those of us who are from Generation X, we know that we did some madness, and we was brought up, and we were well brought up and taught stuff in our homes that we knew when we were outside with our friends. This behavior is wrong. This is not acceptable. If my parents find out about this, I'm in bad shape. But it's so much fun, and I don't want to be left out, so I'm going to go along with it. So we've been there, right? We've been there. Many of us can speak from personal experience, right? So we got the conformity element, but also within the black community, I think that there's a lack of focus at the moment. I think there's a lack of focus for our young people. There may have been times when we had more of a militant type of youth culture because the focus was, or the politics was, a black power era or a consciousness era or a Rasta era or a national, a NOI era, whatever the era, but there's a kind of consciousness that filters down to the really young from, it's youth culture. And so the children in school follow the older teenagers that have left school, that kind of age group. And when that older age group has, like I said, whether it's a Black Panther or the Black Panther Party or that type of ideology, some expression of black resistance, right, to imperialism, when that's expressed, whether it's religiously or as a militant secular organization, doesn't matter. But those slogans, that language, that way of thinking filters down to the school children. And so they have a different focus. As well as being young and crazy, they still speak that type of language, right? And are influenced by that. But there isn't that. I don't know if that's really in the black space at the moment. I don't know if that's the case. We're kind of moving in a different transition era of different ideas bubbling and surfacing to the top. And so right now, I don't think young people have that type of focus. And what's filtered down now is the social media. And just as long as you trend, it can be for anything, any madness, but as long as you trend, as long as you're relevant, as long as you get hits, then that's sufficient. And so that would have, opened them up to being susceptible to be caught up in something like that. But our young people are, I would say, generally speaking, pretty brilliant, pretty talented, pretty gifted and blessed by God, but also, like all young people, or what's common is they're just growing up, you know what I mean, and going through their changes. And I always say in a black community that they are a product of us. So when there is really brilliant things, and we hear about those people, those young people that the youngest person I think that has done their English, maths and science GCSEs or A levels are like black children. And I think like year 8 and year 9 finishing their O levels and A levels or the equivalent. Some of the youngest people to accomplish that remarkable feat or precocious feat has been young black people as a product of us as a community, not just as a family, but as in that's our potential. That speaks to our potential. I don't know if things like that actually trend, or I don't know if we're ready for that. I don't know if we like things like that, or we kind of like the little madnesses and the little shocking trends that our people get caught up in. But yeah, they are a product of us. So for better or for worse, they are a product of us. But yeah, really cool looking in the comment section on this video that said, just causing havoc and displaying intimidating behavior. Basically, that's what I observed. But looking in the comment section on the video that filmed the incident, is it the thing that happened on a Tuesday with the young people running around? Somebody puts in there, why are the majority of them black teens? Another one said, 1 foot in the jungle. Another said, because racism in it, fam. You gotta laugh. And then there was in another section, that's just a few. In another section, there was a picture of a group of chimps. So, on a serious note, it's going to be the elephant in the room. While we would like our young people in the community to have that freedom to just be children and just do what children do, they will be, in a society like the UK, be judged by some, unfortunately probably more and more, as the far right, the Restore Party, the Reform Party, as parties like this and politicians like Farage, as they ascend in relevance, political discourse, it will remind us that we're not really post-racial yet, even after Michelle and Obama passed through the White House, right? Nothing to do with the UK. That wasn't in Britain, but Britain is influenced by American culture, and so we were as a society in the UK asking that question after Obama: have we become post-racial? Well, I think we don't even ask that question no more. We are tribal, like our ancient ancestors. Tribalism in its many forms is alive and well. Catch you after the break.